Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload. I never thought I would find myself standing on the opposite side of the very vows I once believed in. Marriage was supposed to be built on trust, respect, and loyalty, or at least that's what I was told. But as I sit here replaying the last 2 years of my life, I realize that the truth can be far uglier than any fairy tale story we convince ourselves of. When my wife Claire leaned across the kitchen table one night and asked, "You still don't trust me enough to share a bed anymore?" I knew the storm I had been trying to ignore was finally about to hit land. Her tone wasn't soft or gentle. It was laced with a kind of frustration, almost accusation, as if I was the one who had betrayed her instead of the other way around. I stared at her across the table, my coffee turning cold in front of me. I didn't want to explode, didn't want to start yelling, because that would have just given her more ammunition. Instead, I simply said, "Not after your one-sided open marriage." The words hung in the air like smoke after a firecracker, loud, undeniable, and impossible to take back. She looked stunned for a moment, her lips parting like she hadn't expected me to call it what it was. Of course, in her mind, it wasn't cheating. She had found some way to twist the word open into her advantage. But here's the thing. Open marriages require both partners to agree. I never agreed. I never wanted it. I never asked for it. She had simply declared it, like a queen making a royal decree, and expected me to go along with it. It all started about a year ago, when she began spending more nights out with her friends from work. At first, I believed her. I had no reason not to. But then her phone would buzz late at night, and she'd turn it face down on the couch. Or she'd step outside to take a call that supposedly couldn't wait until morning. My gut told me something was wrong, but I kept convincing myself to trust her. One evening, after another mysterious late return, she came home and sat me down on the couch. She spoke with a strange kind of excitement in her voice, like she had just discovered something life-changing. "I've been thinking," she began. "Marriage shouldn't be about ownership. It should be about freedom, about letting each other explore. Don't you think?" I just stared at her, trying to figure out what she was getting at. Then she smiled in a way that still makes my stomach twist when I remember it. "I think we should try an open marriage. It could make things more exciting, for both of us." I laughed at first, thinking it was a joke, but she didn't laugh. She just sat there waiting for me to agree. When I told her I had no interest in something like that, her smile faded, but she didn't argue. At least not then. What I didn't know was that she had already decided. Whether I agreed or not didn't matter. Over the following months, I noticed changes. Different perfumes lingering on her clothes, excuses that grew thinner by the day, and a distance in her eyes when she looked at me. I wasn't her husband anymore, at least not in the way that mattered. I was just the man paying half the bills while she lived her open life. I tolerated it longer than I should have. Maybe because I didn't want to admit to myself that my marriage was falling apart. Maybe because I still loved her in some twisted way. Or maybe because I didn't know what to do. Divorce wasn't something I had ever imagined for myself. But trust, that was gone the moment she decided her vows didn't apply to her anymore. So yes, when she asked why I wouldn't share a bed with her anymore, I told her the truth. Not after her one-sided open marriage. But what I didn't know then was that she had been planning something far more sinister. Something that went beyond betrayal, beyond dishonesty, into the territory of malice. It began with small things I brushed off at first. She'd ask if I was feeling tired, or mention that I looked pale when I felt perfectly fine. She'd push me to drink from her glass or eat off her plate, things she had never cared about before. There was a strange insistence behind it, and my instincts told me to keep my guard up. Then one day, when she thought I wasn't home, I overheard her on the phone. Her voice was low, almost a whisper, but I caught enough. "He doesn't trust me anymore. I'll make sure he can't pretend he's innocent either. If he ends up with it, no one will ever believe he wasn't cheating too." Those words hit me like a punch to the chest. I realized with sickening clarity that she wasn't just betraying me. She was trying to ruin me. To trap me in a lie I had never told. To brand me as unfaithful so she could justify her own choices to everyone else. I knew right then I needed proof. I couldn't just confront her without something solid, because she'd deny it. She'd twist it. She was good at that. So I started being careful. I checked her discarded messages when she wasn't looking. I backed up her chats from our shared computer. I saved screenshots, audio snippets, anything I could find that showed what she was doing, and I found enough. Enough to piece together the ugly truth. She had been seeing people behind my back under the excuse of an open marriage, and now she was planning to sabotage my health, my reputation, and my dignity just to make me look like the guilty one. I remember sitting there late at night, staring at the folder on my computer labeled proof, my hands shaking. I didn't want this. I didn't want my marriage to come to this. But she had forced my hand. The next morning, I sent the folder to her parents, her sister, and even her closest friend. No commentary, no angry message, just the raw evidence. Let them see who she really was. And then, I waited. 48 hours later, I found myself standing at my front door as pounding echoed through the hallway. Claire's voice was shrill, furious, trembling with a rage I had never heard before. She screamed my name, demanded I open the door, cursed at me loud enough for the neighbors to hear. She knew what I had done. She knew her perfect little image had shattered in front of the people she cared about most. But instead of guilt, all I felt was a strange calm. Because for the first time in months, maybe years, the truth wasn't just something I carried alone. It was out there, undeniable, and she could no longer twist it to make me the villain. And that was only the beginning of what came next. When the banging on my front door first started, I didn't move. I sat on the couch, my heart beating fast, but my body strangely calm. Claire's voice echoed through the hallway, sharp and raw with anger. "Open this door right now. Do you hear me? You think you can humiliate me like this?" she shouted. The wood of the door rattled under her fists. "You're a coward, a pathetic little man hiding behind screens and lies." Screens and lies. That was her specialty, not mine. The irony almost made me laugh, but I stayed quiet. I wanted her to burn through her fury before I faced her. After a few more minutes of screaming, the pounding slowed. Her voice cracked. "Please," she said, softer this time. "Please, just open the door. We need to talk. You can't do this to me." I finally stood and opened the door, just a crack. Enough to see her but not let her push her way in. Her face was red, eyes wet, and hands trembling. She looked less like the confident woman who once told me marriage should be open and more like a person cornered by the truth. "What do you want, Claire?" I asked evenly. She tried to force a smile, but it came out warped. "You didn't have to send that to my family. Do you have any idea what you've done? They think I'm some kind of monster now." I met her eyes, unflinching. "I didn't do this. You did. All I did was show them the truth." Her face hardened, and her hands clenched into fists. "You're supposed to protect me. That's what a husband does, not destroy me." That was the moment I realized just how deep her manipulation ran. In her mind, I was still responsible for shielding her from consequences, even though she had shattered everything that made us a couple. "You destroyed yourself," I said. "I just stopped covering for you." She flinched as though the words stung. Then her voice rose again. "You don't understand how bad this looks for me. My parents won't even return my calls. My sister called me disgusting. My best friend says she doesn't know who I am anymore." Her voice cracked. "Do you know how that feels?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell her that I had felt that way every night for the past year, wondering how the woman I loved could treat me like I didn't matter. But instead, I just leaned against the doorframe and said, "Now you know how I've felt all along." Her expression twisted. For a moment, I thought she might break down and cry. But instead, she turned her pain into fury again. "You're not innocent," she spat. "You think you're so pure, so loyal. But you were going to leave me, weren't you? You wanted me to be the villain in everyone's eyes so you could play the victim." I shook my head slowly. "I didn't have to make you the villain, Claire. You did that all by yourself." She stepped closer, her voice dropping low. "You think you've won? You think sending those messages makes you some kind of hero? People forget things, families forgive. But you? You'll always be the bitter husband who couldn't satisfy his wife. That's how they'll remember you." I swallowed hard, keeping my face neutral. Inside, her words cut, but not in the way she intended. They didn't make me feel weak. They reminded me of why I couldn't let her control the story anymore. "You can say whatever you want about me," I replied. "But they've seen the proof. They know the truth. That can't be erased." She glared at me, breathing hard. Then, without another word, she turned and stormed down the hallway, her heels striking the floor like gunshots. When the door finally closed behind her, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. My hands were shaking. I sat back down on the couch, my mind racing. The phone started buzzing not long after. First, it was her sister, thanking me for being honest. Then her parents, their voices heavy with disappointment, not in me but in her. They wanted to know if I was safe, if she had really been trying to do what the messages suggested. I didn't give them every detail, but I told them enough. She was planning to ruin me, I said quietly. I couldn't let that happen. Her father sighed. I don't know what to say. I raised her better than this. I wanted to say something comforting, but what comfort was there? The damage was done. Over the next 2 days, I watched the fallout unfold like a slow-motion crash. Mutual friends stopped reaching out to her. Social media posts that once had dozens of supportive comments now sat empty. Her carefully built image of being the perfect, free-spirited woman was cracking under the weight of reality. But she didn't disappear quietly. She started sending me long messages, sometimes apologizing, sometimes accusing, sometimes begging me to retract what I had sent. If you love me at all, delete it, one of them read. Tell them it was a misunderstanding, please. Another one, hours later, was darker. You're destroying me. If I lose everyone, it's your fault. I stared at those words for a long time. Guilt crept into me, uninvited. Even after everything she had done, some part of me still cared, still wanted to protect her. But then I remembered her whisper on the phone, the one I had overheard about making sure no one would believe me. That snapped me back. No, I wasn't destroying her. She was reaping what she had sown. One night, around midnight, I heard her outside again. This time, she didn't knock. She just shouted up from the street, her voice echoing through the quiet neighborhood. You think this is over? It's not over. You can't just expose me and walk away. You're still my husband. You don't get to leave me like this. Lights flicked on in neighboring houses. Curtains shifted. People were watching. I felt a mixture of embarrassment and vindication. Let them see. Let them hear her unfiltered rage. Maybe now they'd understand what I had been dealing with. I didn't go outside. I didn't shout back. I just let her burn herself out until her voice was hoarse, and she finally staggered away. When I woke the next morning, I found a note shoved under my door. The handwriting was messy, rushed. You've taken everything from me, but you don't know what I'm capable of. If I can't win, I'll make sure you lose too. I read it 3 times, my stomach twisting tighter each time. This wasn't just anger anymore. This was escalation. She wasn't just embarrassed, she was dangerous. And I realized then that the worst might not be behind me. It might still be coming. The note she slid under my door sat on the coffee table for hours before I touched it again. Every time I looked at those words, if I can't win, I'll make sure you lose too. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. Claire had crossed from anger into obsession, and that was far more dangerous than anything I had dealt with before. I thought about calling her family right away, showing them the note, but a part of me hesitated. Would they believe she had written it in the heat of the moment? Would they dismiss it as an empty threat? No, I decided. I needed more. I needed something that left no room for denial. So I began saving everything. Every voicemail she left, every text, every piece of evidence that painted a picture of someone unraveling. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted protection. Proof wasn't just for me. It was my shield. The very next evening, she showed up again. This time, she didn't scream or bang on the door. She knocked softly, like she used to when she forgot her keys. For a second, it almost felt like the old days, before everything fell apart. But when I opened the door just a crack, her eyes gave her away. They weren't soft or loving, they were sharp, calculating. We need to talk, she said flatly. I didn't move. There's nothing left to talk about. Yes, there is. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. You've embarrassed me. You've ruined me with my family. But there's still a way out, for both of us. All you have to do is tell them you exaggerated, that you were jealous, that none of it was as bad as it looked. I stared at her, stunned by the audacity. So you want me to lie after all the lies you told? She shrugged like it was the simplest solution. It's better than having this shadow follow you around too. Don't you realize? Everyone's looking at you now, wondering why your wife would stray so far. Do you really want to carry that forever? Her words hit their mark. That was my biggest fear. That I'd be seen as weak, as the husband who wasn't enough. But then I remembered the countless nights I spent waiting for her to come home, the phone calls she took in secret, the betrayal she tried to pin on me. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not covering for you anymore. Not ever again." Her face twitched and the mask of calm cracked. "You'll regret this," she whispered. Then she turned and walked away, her steps quick and sharp. That night I got a call from one of our mutual friends, Mark. His voice was hesitant, almost apologetic. "Hey man, Claire reached out to me. She's telling people you're making things up because you're bitter, that you couldn't handle the open marriage thing, so you're trying to drag her down. She says you faked those messages." I closed my eyes and let out a bitter laugh. Of course she would. She couldn't win with the truth, so she was trying to rewrite it. "Did you believe her?" I asked. There was a pause. "I don't know. Honestly, after seeing how desperate she sounded, I figured there had to be more to the story." "But I also know you, and I don't think you'd go this far unless you had proof." "I have proof," I said quietly. "I sent it to her family for a reason." Mark sighed. "Yeah, I figured. Just watch yourself, all right? She's not thinking straight." He didn't have to tell me twice. I could feel it in my bones. Claire wasn't done. The next blow came at my workplace. I walked in one morning to hushed whispers and curious glances. My manager pulled me aside and handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter, typed, anonymous, but I recognized the phrasing immediately. It accused me of harassment, of being unfaithful, of creating a hostile environment for my wife and others. Every word dripped with the venom only Claire could write. "She sent this, didn't she?" my manager asked, his tone cautious. I nodded. "She's trying to destroy me because I exposed the truth. I have documentation, screenshots, audio, whatever you need." He studied me for a long moment before nodding. "Bring it in. We'll make sure this doesn't go further." It was humiliating, but also empowering. For once, I wasn't the one scrambling to cover up. She was, and her lies were collapsing faster than she could build them. Later that week, her sister called me again. "She came by our parents' house," she said, her voice shaking. "She was screaming at them, saying you brainwashed us, that you edited everything. But she slipped. She admitted she was trying to make you look guilty." My chest tightened. "She admitted it?" "Yes, and I recorded it. I didn't want to, but something told me I might need to." I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, relief flooding me. "Thank you, that means everything." Piece by piece, the puzzle was falling into place. Claire wasn't just exposed. She was exposing herself. Her desperation was making her careless. The final confrontation came 2 nights later. I had just settled onto the couch when the door rattled violently. This wasn't knocking. It was someone trying to force their way in. My heart pounded as I grabbed my phone and hit record before approaching. "Open up!" Claire screamed. Her voice was wild, almost unrecognizable. "You think you can ruin my life and just sit there? You think you can take everything from me?" I stayed behind the door, speaking calmly. "I didn't take anything. You lost it yourself." She laughed bitterly, the sound chilling. "You think you've won because they believe you now? No. I'll find a way. I'll make sure no one ever looks at you the same again." I didn't answer. I just let her words pour out, every venomous drop captured on my phone. Eventually, she realized I wasn't going to open the door. Her screams turned into sobs, then into silence. When I finally peeked through the peephole, she was gone. The next morning, I compiled everything: the note, the voicemails, the workplace letter, and now, the recording of her threats. I sent it all to her family, to my lawyer, and to a trusted friend. This time, it wasn't just about exposing her infidelity. It was about showing the pattern, the danger. 2 days later, her father called me. His voice was heavy, tired. "She's leaving town for a while," he said. "We've convinced her to get help. I don't know if she'll take it seriously, but at least she's not at your door anymore." I closed my eyes and let out a long breath. Relief washed over me, but it was laced with sadness. This wasn't how I wanted things to end. I didn't want revenge, not really.
I just wanted the woman I loved to love me back, to respect me. But that woman had been gone for a long time. As the days turned into weeks, the silence became its own kind of healing. No more screaming, no more threats, just quiet. I still get looks from people who know bits and pieces of the story. Some pity, some curiosity, some judgment. But I don't care anymore. I know the truth. The people who matter know the truth. And Claire, she has to live with the wreckage she created. Sometimes, late at night, I
Think about her question. You still don't trust me enough to share a bed anymore. And I realize now, trust isn't something you can demand. It's something you build, piece by piece, with honesty and loyalty. She tore it apart, and I refused to rebuild it for her. That was my revenge, not anger, not violence, not even exposure. My revenge was simply walking away, leaving her alone with the truth she could no longer escape.